The gymnasium lights blazed, illuminating the nearly empty parking lot. Exhaustion tugged at Sarah, a reminder of the grueling volleyball match she just finished. Her team, the Wildcats, had clinched a hard-fought victory, but the thrill of the win was fading, replaced by the prospect of the long walk home. She hoisted her gym bag higher onto her shoulder, the squeak of the strap breaking the silence. Taking a deep breath of the cool night air, Sarah started down the familiar, yet tonight ominous, route home. Her sneakers pounded a steady rhythm on the pavement, each step echoing in the stillness. Street lights cast long, distorted shadows that danced with the swaying trees. The oppressive silence of the night seemed to deepen as she entered the lane, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves felt heavy, almost suffocating. The oak trees, their branches gnarled and twisted, loomed over her like skeletal guardians of some long-forgotten secret. The houses on this street were set back further, hidden behind overgrown hedges and wrought iron gates. Most stood empty, their windows dark and lifeless. Sarah's grip tightened on the pepper spray. She told herself it was nothing, just another resident out for a late-night stroll. But a shiver of apprehension ran down her spine. Who else would be on Oakwood Lane, especially at this hour? She stole another glance over her shoulder. The figure was still there, shrouded in the shadows of the trees. It seemed to be moving at the same pace as Sarah, neither gaining nor falling behind.
My instincts are screaming at me to run.
Sarah's pace quickened. She wanted to catch up to the woman, to walk alongside her, to find comfort in the presence of another human being. The silence of the night, broken only by the sound of their footsteps, felt oppressive. She longed to hear the sound of another voice, even if it was just a simple greeting. As she drew closer, she noticed that the woman was wearing a long, flowing dress, its fabric billowing slightly in the breeze.
It's a beautiful night for a walk,
Sarah ventured, trying to break the tension. Still, the woman didn't respond. She stood frozen as if carved from stone. Sarah's unease intensified. She took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray in her bag.
Are you all right?
Sarah's mind screamed. She tried to break free from the terror that held her captive, but it was no use. Her body refused to respond. Sarah slowly opened her eyes, a sliver at a time. The creature was gone. Relief, sudden and overwhelming, washed over her. She stumbled back, her legs weak beneath her. She turned to run, but a sound stopped her dead in her tracks. It was a low growl, guttural and menacing. Ahead, in the distance, she saw a light, a single solitary light, cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. She ran towards it, her legs screaming in protest, her vision blurring at the edges. As she drew closer, she realized that the light came from a motorcycle, its engine idling softly at the side of the road. A figure sat astride the bike, his back to her. Beneath the visor, a young man's face appeared. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile that did little to calm Sarah's racing heart. He couldn't have been much older than her, maybe 20 at most. His leather jacket was adorned with various patches, hinting at a life lived on the open road. He looked harmless enough, but after the encounter with the creature in the white dress, Sarah knew better than to trust appearances.
Hey there, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Sarah flinched at his touch, her body still coiled tight with fear. The motorcyclist paused, sensing her unease. He withdrew his hand and took a step back.
Easy there, I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to help.
He gestured to the motorcycle.
Come on, hop on, I'll take you wherever you need to go.
He helped her onto the back of the motorcycle, settling her behind him. The leather seat was surprisingly warm, a welcome contrast to the icy fear that gripped her heart. She clutched at his jacket, burying her face against his back, seeking solace in the solid feel of his body.
The rumble of the engine vibrated through me, a comforting counterpoint to the frantic beating of my own heart.
Hold on tight!
The motorcyclist shouted over the roar of the engine. He kicked the bike into gear, and with a surge of power they shot forward, leaving the shadows of Oakwood Lane behind. Sarah kept her eyes squeezed shut, unwilling to look back, afraid of what she might see. The wind whipped at her face, tearing at her hair, but she barely noticed. All that mattered was escaping the terror that lurked behind her.
As we sped through the night, my grip on the motorcyclist tightened. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the creature from Oakwood Lane was pursuing us, its glowing eyes boring into my back.
She risked a glance over her shoulder, her heart leaping into her throat at what she saw. In the distance, framed by the receding shadows of Oakwood Lane, stood a figure in a long white dress. Its head was twisted at an unnatural angle, its empty sockets burning with an infernal light, and it was smiling. The horrifying grin widened as the creature remained bathed in the motorcycle's fading tail light. Sarah's breath hitched, her scream stuck behind a wall of terror. Her fingers turned white as she gripped the motorcyclist's jacket. The motorcyclist, oblivious to the terror, continued down the deserted road.
The wind howled, whipping my hair across my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, replaying the creature's grotesque visage, the skeletal grin, the empty sockets, a chilling mockery of life.
Each time she peeked, the figure seemed closer, its white dress billowing like a ghostly shroud. The town's edge, marked by a flickering streetlight, offered a glimmer of hope.
Faster! Please go faster! As they raced toward the town limits, Sarah's terror escalated into a blind panic. The creature was gaining on them, its strides growing longer, more confident, its presence a suffocating weight on her chest.
The peaceful rhythm of the motorcycle engine now sounded like a frantic heartbeat in her ears, each revolution a desperate plea for escape. Her vision narrowed, focusing on the motorcyclist's broad back, his leather jacket a tangible shield against the horror that stalked them. She squeezed her eyes shut, burying her face against his back, seeking solace in the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek.
But her plea went unheard, lost in the roar of the engine and the relentless howl of the wind. The creature was close now, so close that Sarah could almost feel its icy breath on her neck. She dared another glance back, her blood turning to ice at what she saw. The creature was no longer simply walking, it glided effortlessly above the ground, its white dress swirling around it like a vortex of ethereal energy. Its eyes, burning brighter than ever, seemed to bore into Sarah's very soul, promising unimaginable torment. Just as Sarah felt the cold touch of despair grip her heart, the motorcycle roared into the town square. The sudden burst of light from the shop windows, the sounds of early morning deliveries, and the sight of people going about their day had an immediate effect. The oppressive darkness that had clung to the creature seemed to dissipate, its form flickering like a candle flame in a sudden draft. With a strangled gasp, Sarah tore her gaze away from the receding nightmare and looked around the bustling square. The familiar sights and sounds of her town, once mundane and unremarkable, now held the precious weight of sanctuary. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but only a dry croak escaped. She shook her head, the weight of her experience pressing down on her, the chilling image of the creature seared into her mind.
Look, you're safe now. Whatever it was, it's gone.
His words, though simple, offered a lifeline of reason in the sea of terror that threatened to drown her. The familiar sights and sounds of the town square, the rumble of a delivery truck, the cheerful chatter of shopkeepers setting out their wares, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, slowly began to chip away at the fear that had her in its grip. Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath, the crisp morning air filling her lungs, chasing away the lingering stench of decay. She looked at the motorcyclist, his kind eyes filled with concern, and realized that he was right. She was safe now. The creature, whatever it was, remained confined to the shadows of Oakwood Lane, a nightmare banished by the rising sun.
Thank you for everything.
No problem. Glad I could help. You sure you're okay to get home from here?
Sarah nodded, her gaze sweeping the bustling town square once more, finding reassurance in the normalcy of it all. The fear, though still lurking at the edges of her awareness, no longer held her captive. She was strong, she realized, stronger than the terror that had threatened to consume her. She would not let this one night, this encounter with the darkness, define her.
Yes, I'm fine. It's just a short walk from here.
The motorcyclist nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer, as if gauging her sincerity. He seemed satisfied, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips.
Take care, and hey, maybe avoid Oakwood Lane after dark from now on, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
She turned and walked away, her steps lighter now, her heart filled with a mixture of gratitude and lingering trepidation. The encounter on Oakwood Lane had changed her, leaving an indelible mark on her soul. She knew that the fear might never fully vanish, that the shadows would always hold a certain power over her. But she also knew that she had faced her fear, and in doing so, she had discovered a strength within herself that she never knew she possessed. She would carry that strength with her, a shield against the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of terror, hope could still find a way to bloom.